For the final races in Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, powered by AWS Sprint Cup, we've got our buckets and spades, and we're by the seaside. We are at Zandvoort in Holland, and we're a little bit behind schedule because very windy and wet weather over the course of yesterday and this morning means that we've had a few cars off the road in the GB3 qualifying session, and we're running a little bit late as they finish their 30-minute qualifying period. You can see how breezy it is. At least the road is now dry, and the sun has broken through. The temperature, John Watson, though, is still on the chilly side.
Well, good morning, David. Good morning, our fans watching at home on television. And there it is, the magnificent, look, the North Sea. White horses appearing, but more importantly, the track is taking its run. This lovely Zandvoort circuit. This circuit in its current configuration, it was introduced in 1999, but in 2020 then they put the chicane. Turns 13 and 14 are now, or 14 is a banked corner, 4.3 kilometers in length, 2.6 miles, and every part of this racetrack, true old school, long pit straight, then you dive off into the sand, not literally into the sand dunes. I mean, how many racetracks can you say the back of the circuit from turn 3 all the way to get back to turn 12, you're in the middle of sand dunes? I think it's an absolutely magnificent racetrack. Always loved racing here, but look at those white horses. That wind is blowing directly across start-finish straight and will be in the tail of the cars as they go out of the Hugenholz hairpin bend, which in the circuit map is turn 4, all the way up through the hills.
And that is one of the corners that, of course, has been reprofiled of late and is banked, and so also is that last corner, the Arie Bock. Now, of course, last round of Sprint Cup, or last rounds, plural, today and tomorrow, and the championship can be resolved in favour of either Raffaele Marcello and Timo Bogoslavski, or Matteo Drudi and Riccardo Feller, or Dries van Thor and Charles Weerts within the Pro Cup, the overall situation. So that is one battle to look for. But then we also have other situations going on, namely in gold and in silver as well. Down in the pit lane, there is 88 Mercedes getting ready for Q1. And it's going to be Raffaele Marcello that drives this morning. Gold, incidentally, is up for grabs between all 5 season-long entrants. And silver is up for grabs between 2 teams and only a point betwixt the 2. And of course, you get a point for pole within the classes in qualifying. This is how gold looks, with Alberto Di Folco and Aurelien Panis ahead of Callum Williams and Nicholas Cruton. Then you've got Finlay Hutchison and Gilles Magnus and Paul Everard and Simon Gachet. And even though they've yet to win, Cesar Gazzo and Adam Ateki, and they are the 5th combination that could mathematically win it. So gold is absolutely wide open. It's going to be a really fierce fight. This is a car that's got a lot of attention surrounding it. Number 69, the Ferrari of Albert Costa and the Dutch driver Thierry Vermeulen. It's going to be Albert Costa who drives this morning, but of course Thierry Vermeulen, whose father Raymond manages Max Verstappen, and there is the Verstappen.com livery on the side of the car. He's going to be the centre of much attention from the Dutch fans. Very much so, on a car that really has been very impressive all the way through the season. It's got great pace. We know Albert Costa, his ability, but Thierry Vermeulen likewise has done a very, very impressive job, and he just gets in behind the wheel of that Ferrari, the 296, the V6 twin turbo, and wrings his neck. So looking forward to seeing what that car will achieve in qualifying. But just thinking, we had running yesterday, one session was dry-ish, one session was wetter, and in the dry conditions, again, it was the Audis that seemed to be the dominant manufacturer. Now, what that'll happen when we get into qualifying, it'll be a quick qualifying session. Whether that will be a BMW, as we're looking at right now, will it be the 88 or another Mercedes? Very competitive, 13-car field, biggest field I think we've ever had in any of these events at Zandvoort. I think you're right, absolutely so, and that even reallocates a couple of cars that might have been seen in bronze, but as there's no bronze category this weekend, shuffle the drivers around and you can go up into the overall situation. There's one of those championship aspirant cars, number 40 Audi Riccardo Feller to drive this morning. Got to say, number 44 Porsche will be an interesting one. Laurin Heinrich and Ian Schenguthen driving for Comme Lenegar's team. It's been a car that we've seen in the Bronze Cup this year, no bronze, so as I say, it's been reallocated to Pro, and with those 2 drivers behind the wheel, should be a real factor for overall positions.
Very much so, because certainly Laurin Heinrich has been an absolute star. We know that Ian Schenguthen has been a Porsche loyalist Porsche driver since he more or less came into motor racing. Another car that people are going to focus a lot on, the 46. Valentino Rossi will be behind the wheel for this session of qualifying, and what an improvement we've seen from the Italian over the course of the season, winning that sprint round in Misano. An extremely emotional day for Valentino Rossi. Lots of memories flooded back, and he's certainly somebody who will look forward to racing, or certainly going out to qualify on a racer circuit.
I mentioned Silver a little while ago. This is how we look. Lorenzo Petresi, Alex Arca, just 1 point ahead of Jordan Love. Now remember that he doesn't have the same number of points as co-driver because he switched between Frank Bird and Alain Valenti over the year after Frank Bird stood down for a couple of events after the death of his father. But Frank Bird is back this weekend and hoping to round out the season on a high note. But here very much to help his co-driver Jordan Love. So silver, gold, and of course pro, all up for grabs. Valentino Rossi gets ready. It is going to be a 20-minute session, and it's all in. We've had on 1 or 2 occasions this year the entry split, so it was a 10-minute dash for, if you like, the gold and pro, and then a 10-minute dash for silver and bronze. Well, without bronze and only 30 cars, relatively speaking only 30 cars, it's all in, and it's going to be a busy track, no question.
Just caught momentarily Valentino Rossi adjusting the steering wheel. There's a mechanism on the BMWs where you can just literally pull the wheel towards you or push it away. So all the controls effectively are adjustable. It's the seat that is fixed, so the seat doesn't change, but the steering wheel position can come to you, from you, up, down, and the same with the pedal box. It can come towards you if you need it, or away from you if you're one of the Total drivers, Charles Fetch, for example, would need the footwell slightly further away.
That's the BMW that Nicholas Crutzen will take out first. You were looking a moment ago at the blue Mercedes of Jordan Love. If you're wondering why there's a kangaroo and a turkey on the front of it, it's because the kangaroo is there for the Australian, and poultry farming is the bird business. So that's why you get the other animal on the front of the car. The car's being wheeled out into the pit lane now, ready to get the session underway. The circuit now clear of the GB3 teams. They've headed back into the pit lane, and yesterday it was particularly wet and wild. It's still breezy, no question about it, and we'll see how much rubber there is on the road. At least something has gone down this morning, but of course anything that was put down yesterday has been washed away with overnight rain.
Yes, I mean, it was a very windy day, wet and windy initially, but certainly very windy at the end of the day. But just that view of the circuit, that's taking you out to the sort of the difficult corner called Schäflach, which is a great corner, but the camera there actually flattened out the elevation change, because there's a lot more elevation change actually from the cockpit than we might actually see from the camera positions. So Schäflach is to me the standout corner on this 2.6 mile, 4.2 kilometer racetrack. I mean, it is one of those corners, makes you feel good about being a racing driver when you get it right. But it's so often the case, a car will go off and there's a lot of gravel on the outside, and that will undoubtedly see a delay in qualifying to get that car removed back to safety.
Just had a look at number 18 Lamborghini as well, new drivers for the weekend. Paul Meyer, the Dutch driver, and the young Brit, Harley Horton, who's been racing in the Nürburgring long distance series this year. Gilles Magnus will go first in number 21, and remember, third in gold, so it's the Gold Cup that he and Finlay Hutchison are fighting for. And the way, of course, that the timetable works out for the second driver, if you like, is that the pressure is really on them. We touched on it a while over the course of the season, but you know, they only get into the car for the first time in the day, in the middle of the race, and they've got to not only play themselves in, but deliver, because it is such an ultra-competitive championship. You don't get many laps of qualifying anyway, but at least that driver then is able to bed himself in with the formation lap and driving the car to the grid, and of course that first stint. But for the second driver, who's done nothing at all day, suddenly thrown into the car in the pit stops, and they've got to be on it straight away. Yeah,
I mean, it's a substantial requirement for a driver to be able to turn it on literally from the minute he straps himself in and goes down the pit lane. I suppose one may say the only balancing benefit that both drivers will face, that conditions now for qualifying will not be the same as the conditions that the start driver will have when the race gets underway at 2 p.m.
Sure.
So that may sort of level it out, but nevertheless, the driver who's not doing qualifying this morning is not going to be in the car. It was virtually 24 hours since he was last in it.
You saw the legend on the front of the Boots and VDS Audi a moment ago, all with you Rui, which is to acknowledge one of the regular Audi drivers, Rui Miohas, the Israeli driver, and all the travails going on in his home country at the moment. 159 McLaren is parked, ready to go. Nikolai Kjærgaard will be behind the wheel of the Gulf liveried car. There's the Jordan Love-driven Mercedes just over its shoulder, number 77. He will drive this morning. Others getting set to go include number 60 Lamborghini. That will be Andrea Caldarelli for Vincenzo Sospiri's team. So it's going to be a very, very frantic session, and because of the nature of the track this morning, some of the teams are suggesting that you might actually be able to make the tyres last a little bit longer, and it could be that even 5 laps into a tyre run you could still be getting an improvement rather than lap 2 or 3, which is the norm. Well, I would always imagine you're going to look for your best timed lap to be on your first flying lap, but track conditions have changed overnight, and there's still a very strong wind blowing, which may or may not have a bearing on how cars, not so much on the pit straight, but as they go into the countryside, the wind will be in their tail, and then as they return, it'll be into the nose of the car. But anyway, we'll see what track conditions are like. It's the ambient and track temperature that probably will be the most the biggest factor in relating to where teams are. They will find that maybe they've got to do those 3 or 4 laps before they get the operating temperature that they would require. One other element that some of the teams point out is that, of course, as part of the work to make Zandvoort once more a Formula One circuit, there has been some resurfacing, and most of that has gone on at the start and the end of the lap. In other words, sectors 1 and 3 have got resurfaced tarmac, whereas sector 2, which is pretty much unaffected, in other words, from the Hugenholz-Bocht all the way round to the Hans-Ernst-Bocht, the chicane towards the end of the lap, that's the older tarmac, and some cars work really well on that and some don't, and therefore you end up with these slightly odd laps of some cars being really good in sectors 1 and 3 and bad in sector 2, and vice versa. So we might well have a few peaks and troughs out of the car's pace. Well, we have to keep an eye and see if one driver is outstanding in sectors 1 and 3 and losing in sector 2. That would be sort of confirmation. Certainly, from my experience of the circuit, the tarmac that, or the road surface that was put down in the 90s and into the early 20s was of and it got so polished that in dry conditions you could almost see the sun bouncing off it, and in wet conditions it was certainly very slippery. So whether that's still the same surface in that middle sector or not, hopefully it's not, but certainly if sectors 1 and 3 are more current in terms of the grip levels that teams can experience. Number 44, Laurin Heinrich at the wheel of the CLRT Porsche that he shares with the Einstüren Kohledergar's team. That is going to be one to watch, I would have thought. 2 very, very quick drivers. We know how good Einstüren is in Porsches, double French champion, regular race winner, and also, of course, Laurin Heinrich was last year's Carrera Cup Germany winner. He was last year's Porsche Junior and has been racing not only successfully in esports this year, but in the Endurance Cup and also in the DTM. So that's going to be a car, I would imagine, that should be there or thereabouts. So we are awaiting the fast lane to open, which should be any moment. And you can see how busy the pit lane is right now. So Raffaele Marciello ready to get out first. We've got the Hondas, of course, the NSX from the Nova Race Events team. Owen Zanotti will drive number 68 in this qualifying session. So the Pirelli slicks go on. And it's still, as we've been saying, a breezy day. There's a busy paddock on the inside of the Tarzan hairpin, and that brings you all the way round to the Gerlachbocht, which is the right-hander just past the Pirelli trucks, and then down towards the Hugenholz-Bocht, turn 3, the banked corner. John Hugenholz, who's rather wrongly attributed as the circuit designer. The original layout of the circuit for 1948 was the inspiration, really, of a man called Sammy Davis, who'd won Le Mans in 1927. The initial race meeting here had an awful lot of help from the British Racing Drivers Club. John Hugenholz was the president of the Dutch Motorsport Federation at the time, so he played a big part in it, and that's why the corner is named after him. But to say he actually designed the circuit is not strictly true. 18 is good to go then. That's the Lamborghini Paul Meyer at the wheel for this session. Underfunded, quick Dutch driver who's been in and out of the sport for many, many seasons. Does a season here, runs out of money, comes back a few years later with enough money, does another season. But he knows the circuit very well. Protege of Jan Lammers, like most young Dutch drivers seem to be over the years. But we'll see how he fares first time out. Green flag then is shown. And here's another line, John, we seem to have used in the previous 9 qualifying sessions, but you've got to find clear track space. Traffic management's going to be vital. Absolutely, and 30 cars on the racetrack all at one time, and with a sequence of corners that blend one into the other, so there's basically just one single line. So the places that are overtaking possible, clearly into Tarzan Hairpin at the end of the pit straight,
possibly down into the chicane at the far end of the circuit. But other than that, there are not a huge number of places where it is easy to make a pass on a car that isn't giving you a little bit of cooperation.
So out of the Masters bocht and through turns 9 and 10 comes now Laurin Heinrich. We've got Fred Verviche, Simon Gachet, Christian Engelhardt out on track as well. Porsche sounding magnificent this morning with the road to itself.
I mean, I thought, had they had a new exhaust? Because I've never heard the flat six roar just quite so as we're seeing the 44 as it comes through the chicane. I mean, that definitely has a different note to it.
Oh, it's worth getting up early for, John. So Heinrich then comes from the Kumho bocht into the Arilindai bocht. There's the banking. Up towards the line he comes. It will start a flying lap for the CLRT Porsche. And thus far, he's got the road to himself. He dives under the camera on the pit gantry and heads into the Tarzan hairpin.
And noticing as he came off the Arilindai block that there's still actually a little bit of sand within the tarmac. You can see it just being kicked up. So, and that wasn't spray. There had been spray earlier in the morning from some of the other categories racing, but that is another, if you want to call it, hazard of the Zandvoort circuit. It is up through the set, again kicking, but that's from just the side of the circuit. But Heinrich leaving absolutely nothing whatsoever. He's right at the very edge and up into something. You can see purple, naturally quickest car, first car to do start a flying lap, but leaning on it now, leaning on the headlight flashers to find a way through, and he gets through cleanly. Good work by the Lamborghini. So Heinrich and Engelhardt now is actually surpassed. So two Porsches on this opening sequence, first flying lap. Now Heinrich has found himself into a load of cars. Again, they're all doing a good job staying off the racing line, letting Heinrich get through. But look, he's got two more to line up before he gets down into the chicane. Well, he's got four more. So he can kiss goodbye anything in this lap in terms of getting a meaningful lap time recorded.
And you sort of question why the team did that, because they knew by being first out they were going to encounter the traffic, and he's absolutely lost that lap, and he's finally bailed out of it. But that was always going to happen. So, okay, yes, they got him out early. Maybe it was a roll of the dice to hope that others didn't go, but they could have seen easily, I would have thought, on all the data, how many other cars he was going to encounter.
I mean, it's inevitable. The first car out is going to encounter a whole load of other cars at the end of his outlap and onto the first flying lap. So frustrating for Heinrich, who was doing an excellent job. Likewise, Christian Engelhardt, who was also there, is the 54. So Simon Gachet is now the driver who's set the fastest time at 1:34.1.
Yeah, Heinrich backed out of it as we saw. So he did a 1:36. Engelhardt a 34.5. And Simon Gachet's Audi, which was quite well suited to the circuit, 1:34.1. There, out of turn 3, with that kind of wall of death banking, you saw how wide up it Heinrich went the previous lap. That was Engelhardt. This is Nikolai Hiergaard in the McLaren, the Garage 59 entry, coming now down to the Hans End bocht. And back on the power.
And for what it was worth, the quickest time he saw yesterday was from Lucas Leggeret in the Clumsy Racing Audi at 1:34.9. That's already been surpassed by Simon Gachet, Engelhardt, then Nicholas Croydon third in the BMWs, a little bit slower, but it's Fred Verviche right now and Albert Costa, the two drivers who are setting purple sector times. Hiergaard goes quickest, fastest overall final sector.
But only by 3 thousandths from Simon Gachet, and of course it's people's first flying lap, so there's a lot more to come. Albert Costa now goes the fastest, and he's done a 1:33.760, first driver of the session into the 1:33s. That's a car that's in a way flattered to deceive this year. You've expected a win from it. It's got the odd second place, but it hasn't happened.
No, and it's a car I think ought to be in the winner's podium.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably a little bit more than it has been, but it's a work in progress. It's the first year for the 296 Ferrari, and no, it's that Robbie Kerr, former single-seater racer and now driver tutor in the garage, so keeping an eye on what's going on. And Albert Costa still retains that overall quickest time, 1:33.7.
Yeah, Robbie Kerr working with Callum Williams and Nicholas Grissom, and it's just going back to that Ferrari. Slow pit stop to Valencia rather did for Costa and Vermeulen. So a win is in the post, I agree. Dries van Vloer looking for 4 in a row in the championship with Charles Witz. He's now got quickest, 1:33.6. Fred Verviche second, 1:33.7. And this is Raffaele Marcello, who could go top, should go top, breaks the beam and does go top. So So Raffaele Marcello, 1:33.550, point 1:23 in the second, quicker than anybody else.
But this is the car that might even improve, but he had a purple sector, he's now lost that. It's currently fourth, Albert Costa. So green, and the Ferrari looking, again, the pace, the natural pace of the car has been there all the time. It's just been the little details that have precluded it from getting more success. So what can he do? Got to beat a 1:33.5, he does, a 1:33.0. Wow, just under half a second. Now that's going to catch the attention of the entire Dries van Thor.
Another one going quickly, John, is Christian Klein in the McLaren, up to four fastest, 1:33.7 in one of the two JP Motorsport, the gold McLarens. This is Dries van Thor then, who is looking, and it's mathematically possible, for 4 sprint titles in a row, but he's lost out in the middle sector.
Yeah, I don't know where he lost that time, but certainly, I mean, had great success here all through his Audi career. Now WRT running the BMWs, and basically that car is getting better and better as the evolution and development of the car takes place. Ricardo Feller pops up into second place. No, it's not. Lauren Heinrichs is just, so it's just literally.
Ricardo Feller has dropped down again, and I think he's had a lap taken off. Yes, he has. So the track limit warnings, we've only had them actually affecting number 40 Audi. So Feller 24th. Now the significance of that, of course, is he's fighting for a championship. So they've got to get up to the pointy end of the grid, and ideally have got to be ahead of 88 Mercedes as well.
Certainly does. So I mean, Feller's illustrated the paces there. He momentarily went second quickest, albeit a track limit of use. So he'll have to be set and have a go, and hopefully maybe find a clear track in which to do that.
So that's Christian Klein heading into Tarzan, the hairpin. He's 5th fastest. It's Costa from Heinrich, from Marcello, from Van Thor, Klein and Vervish. Maxime Martin watches on, listens to his music, trying to calm as he watches what's going on, put himself in his own world. Patrick Niederhauser is the only one that's not yet done a time, incidentally, in the Santalock Audi, the all-blue Audi, as number 44, Lauren Heinrich, presses on. He was good in sector 1, but down in sector 2. Going back to the earlier point about the nature of the lap and the different tarmac around the circuit here. We need a lap out of Ricardo Feller as well, because he effectively is penultimate at the moment. But here he comes, and again, look, he's down in that midpoint of the lap, up towards the timing line. They dive under the camera then, and the Audi goes through second fastest. Ricardo Feller, how about that?
Well, was there any surprise? I mean, he had a lap, a second fastest lap about 3 minutes ago. That was deleted. Back on board, Raffaele Marcello coming down to the chicane, up in sector 1, half a second down virtually in that middle sector, and you can hear the front splitter just grinding on the racetrack as it bottoms out going through the chicane. Now the run down to these 2 final corners, and it's the Kumho, that's a non-bank now into this Ariland bank, the banked part of the racetrack, the second bank corner here on the Zandvoort circuit. So what can he do? He's got a net situation. So if he can improve from his present 4th position, 3rd's maybe possible. Doesn't look like he achieved it. But Ricardo Feller certainly has done a great job to get up to 2nd place.
And a lap time taken off Norbert Siedler, and a lap warning has just gone the way of Alex Arkin. You're looking here at Consta Lapalainen, who is 10th. Same pattern look, so many. Good in sector 1, not quite so good in sector 2. Turning now into turn 13. And then into the Ari line die box, and this is where it really banks, and it's a very steep banking. I promise you, try running along that, you just get pulled down to the bottom of the road. Hurts your ankles, no end. But in the car, it's a different matter. And over the line goes Lapalainen, stays 10th fastest, lost down in the last sector as well. And we have got pretty much half the session remaining. 10 more minutes are on the clock.
So Albert Costa has the quickest lap by now just over 3/10 of a second from Ricardo Feller. So most of the front runners back in the pits. The 88 still on track. This is the area of the racetrack. This is the middle sector, which will come to a conclusion just as we come down into the braking zone into the chicane. So again, up in sector 1, loses more than he's gained in the middle sector, and unlikely to see much improvement. Patrick Niederhauser, where did that happen? Suddenly the 25 Audi has gone 2nd quickest.
And that's on its first flying lap, and that's interesting because they waited for the first 7-8 minutes or so before starting a run, and as they did that, the road is pretty clear because the majority of cars now are in the pit lane. So the complete opposite of what CLRT did with Heinrich. They went out first and got caught in the traffic. Santalock have waited, they've let the track calm and quieten, and banged in a time with a clear lap.
And while all that was happening, Marcello has also improved from fourth. He's gone up to third, so it's only a small improvement, but significant. He's now just a fraction under 0.2 of a second slower than the quickest car, the Ferrari of Albert Costa's at 32. BMW comes in, is going to be turned on those dollies and pushed back into the garage. And we wait to see what they are going to do. We've got just under 9 minutes of the session to go.
Jordan Love under investigation for speeding in the pit lane. And the Ferrari there heads to the pits. I think I'm right in saying that's the car of Nicola Marinangeli out of silver. So Costa, Niederhauser, Marcello, Feller, Heinrich, Van Thor, Klein, Vervish, Kiergaard and Lapalainen is currently the order. And Raffaele Marcello has gone back out for another run.
Yeah, but the pit lane is the busiest part of the circuit today because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cars, 24 are in the pit lane. So great time to be on the racetrack if you've got enough energy remaining in your tyres to take full advantage of it. That's what we're seeing. Raffaele Marcello again up in sector 1, but that middle sector drops away by more than the gain in sector 1. So whether there's any further improvement possible, there's going to have to be a pretty high-heat final sector from, oh, he's coming into the pit lane. And I think, as everybody has done, they've come in, and whether they put on fresh or new tyres, we wait to see.
Super slow-mo, car riding over the curbs, rattling over the curb there, but the maximum commitment being put in by the drivers is impressive, isn't it?
I mean, for me, it was always a circuit you felt you could attack, and that was an example of it. Great slow-mo photographs, pictures coming of Marcello, and you could see, again, the oscillation when you run these curbs, and every racetrack got a variety of different curbs. The oscillation on the unloaded wheel, I mean, I look at it and think, oh, I don't want to see any more of that. So Marcello in, the car up on the dollies again, pushed back into the garage, and if they want to do any meaningful amount of work other than just changing, and Patrick Niederhauser, he's on it again.
But look, he's the only man really out there. There are about 2 other cars, and he's nowhere near them. Loses a little bit of time, in fact, quite a lot of time in that middle sector. But let's see whether he can make up for it in sectors 1 and 3. Niederhauser looking absolutely dynamite, absolute best in sector 1. But let's see how he pieces together the lap as he now brings the car into the Arie Luyendyk box, heading up towards the end of the lap. And assuming he stays out, this should be good. He's just over a 10th away from the pole position time, and he doesn't stay out.
No, I think he saw that he lost a half a second in that middle sector. Certainly the car was mighty quick through sector 1, but the half a second loss meant that, do I stay out and do another lap and actually not improve? He was only a 10th of a second down in Albert Costa, but that half second loss in the middle sector, either the team called him in or he made that judgment from the information on the steering wheel.
So he'll go on to a second set of boots. Lucas Legeret pits as well. And where is Legeret in the times this morning? He's a long way down, 23rd, so that's a car that you would anticipate should be much, much higher up. Away goes Dries Van Thor. He had a lap time taken off him earlier for track limit abuses, but he's back out now. Albert Costa is good to go, and we're into the last 6 minutes, so it's going to get all harum-scarum right now.
It's going to be a busy racetrack as it was at the very beginning of the opening session. It's going to be everybody trying to find that magic clear lap. There's the 69 Ferrari, provisionally quickest. And very shortly, Valentino Rossi likewise sitting impassively, thinking it through, currently in 16th position. So he'll be hoping to find a bit more pace. Quickest BMW presently is Dries Van Thor, up in 6th position, and then the next BMW, Nicholas Kreutz, then Valentino in 16th place. So he will hopefully try and get that BMW at worst into the top 10.
Right now, the leading 12 covered by just under a second, and to prove how competitive the championship is, 11th and 12th, Andrea Caldarelli and Gilles Magnus are tied to the 1000th on the lap time.
Sticker tyres going on to the 40. Audi, Marinangeli out on his Ferrari AF Corsa. So we'll hopefully get to see at some point Riccardo Feller, who we know has got natural pace. The Audi looks to be a pretty impressive car, as it has been through its history and career around the Zandvoort circuit, but right now it's Ferrari as the dominant brand by, well, it's a 100th of a second between that and Patrick Niederhauser.
Well, Marinangeli is on a mission, Silver Cup driver, and we've seen over the course of the year that he's very rapid. He shares with Sean Hudspeth, and Nicola Marinangeli, former Formula 4 racer, first year of GT racing. He's come out of the Euro Formula Open Formula 3 style competition. And for the AF Corsa team in one of the older 488 Ferraris, a good learning season has been achieved.
So the back end just beginning to fidget. Now Ryan, as he comes out of block 10, corner 10, they don't give a corner name to it, then down to the chicane. And there's sits one of these corners, or sequence corners, where it's really a slow in and then drive the car all the way through the transition back to the left, rather than coming in and sort of tippy-toeing around the nose and not getting a very balanced exit out of the corner.
Tempting fate in saying this, but we haven't had many major dramas, if any, this morning. I don't think we've had a car off the road even, or a spin or anything, so the drivers behaving themselves impeccably, as they need to do in a sense, given it's such a short, sharp session. 3.5 minutes on the clock now.
Nicholas Croydon is now going to be the fastest BMW. Dries van Thor is on a purple. Nicola Shergaard in the McLaren up to third. So literally, as the cars are coming across the line, there is Dries van Thor. What will he do in this middle section? This is going to be key to whether they can drag the 32 BMW, currently in 9th position, up to the front. He gets a personal best in this middle sector. But look at Heinrich doing fastest overall in the Porsche in that middle sector.
Looking very rapid indeed, and so also is Ricardo Feller, as now we're going to start the shuffling, I think, as Laurin Heinrich goes quickest of all in the Porsche then. He's done a 1:32.579, half a second quicker than anybody else. That is a really impressive lap.
And it sounds glorious as well.
But can he stay there? Because now Dries van Thor goes second in the BMW, and he's 0.251 of a second back. Lapalainen's Ferrari up to 4th quickest now. Number 14 Ferrari comes to Lapalainen. And Caldarelli goes second in the Lamborghini, 0.200 of a second down. But Laurin Heinrich is still top of the times. We've got just 2.5 minutes to go and counting.
Very tense moments in qualifying. You can come across the line and go quickest overall, and by the time you come back to the end of the lap to come into the pitch, you can find yourself dropped about 3 or 4 spots. Alex Arca in the attempted car is up to 6th place, fastest silver car so far.
Championship-wise, Marcello is only 10th and Feller is only 13th, so both need to get a wriggle on. And the Audi needs to be ahead of the Mercedes, and right now Marcello is wriggling because he's done an absolute best in the middle sector.
The sector that's been the sector that the cars looked slightly weaker than the other 2 sectors. Whatever they've done, he's down in sector 1, he's up in sector 2 again, virtually within 0.03 of a second. But Marcello in 10th place is looking to improve. Gilles Magnus has jumped up to 11th in his Audi.
Marcello goes second then. He splits Heinrich and Caldarelli, and that means the gap to pole, 0.160 of a second. Van Thor has done an absolute best in the first sector. Verviche goes 5th. That's Van Thor. We also need to have a look at Ricardo Feller because he's doing his best to piece together an improved lap time, and we'll get Van Thor over the line first. Feller goes quickest, 1:32.290. Ricardo Feller, and a red flag very quickly shown with a minute to go. And I fear that that might mean we won't restart because you can't get an outlap done in a minute. That could be the end of it, and Feller just, I think, timed that to perfection, and that's really gone against Van Thor.
Certainly has, and I mean, that red flag was no hesitation, whatever the incident is. It was absolutely on the, so the racetrack has been neutralised. Everybody will have to come in to the pit lane at a very reduced pace, and I'm sure, David, with just just under a minute now, that there's no way the session will continue.
And that's the reason, because Paul Meyer is off the road, and well off the road. That's...
I think that might be a shift lap. Yeah, it is.
Okay,
yes. Wow! Did he ever get into trouble there? The back end came out, and at undiminished speed, he ended up into the gravel. That was monumental. But the car is damaged, obviously, but out of the car uninjured. That will certainly wake you up first thing in the morning. And that's always been the issue coming up into Schlieffach. If you get a little bit, the back end broke away before he was in the middle of the racetrack when it started to slide, and then just continues rotating and rotating and rotating, and eventually the Tech Pro barriers at the outside of Schlieffach brought the car to a halt. And that's the reason why very rapidly the red flag was deployed. So driver okay, car wounded but very repairable.
And as we predicted, the session will not be resumed. So qualifying is over, and Ricardo Feller timed that to perfection. He got pole position ahead of Laurin Heinrich by 0.289 of a second just before the flags flew, and Paul Meyer is okay. The Dutch driver out of the car. The car will need some work, and the circuit team ready to take him to the medical centre just for a quick check, as is, of course, regulation after any incident, large or small. So there is the hero of the session. Riccardo Fella looked to be struggling at one point, but then boom, out of nowhere, up to the top.
I wonder how many others opted to fit a new set of Pirelli rubber, because we saw those tyres being fitted to the number 40 Audi before he went out, so clearly he was going to have the best opportunity, and he has been quick. He had a time deleted, an earlier lap was deleted. He ended up in the top 6 comfortably, and then all of a sudden, wallop, he goes on his only driver to get into the load, 1 minute 32s, by just under 0.3 of a second from Lauren Heinrich in the Porsche. And then Raffaele Marcello, the championship leader at this moment, is on the second row provisionally. Well, now that's confirmed, alongside Andrea Caldarelli in the Lamborghini, and Dries van Voor's the first BMW in 5th.
And what about the classes? Silver, Alex Arca, that is important, class point, and gold, the pole position in the class point, Gilles Magnus. But overall, Riccardo Fella topping the times by 0.289 of a second from Lauren Heinrich, Raffaele Marcello third from Andrea Caldarelli and Dries van Voor. Fred Verviche sixth ahead of Alvia Costa, and then Christian Klein. The top 10 rounded out by Konsta Lapalainen, and the best of the silvers, Alex Arca. Patrick Niederhauser 11th from Nikolai Kiergaard, and then Gilles Magnus taking the gold pole from Christian Engelhardt, Valentino Rossi 15th, and then Jordan Love, Nicholas Krutem, Thomas Neubauer, Lucas Legeret and Norbert Siedler rounding out the top 2/3 of the grid. Aurélien Pan is next from Marcus Pavarud and Jacopo Guidetti. Then César Gazot from Simon Gachet, a long way back. Gachet's Audi not working for him, but he was ahead of Nicola Marinangeli, Jesse Salmanatio, Paul Meyer, who caused that red flag, then Owen Zanotti, and Grégoire de Moustier again struggling, slowest of all. Let's have a look at the highlights then of that session that began with the cars all lined up, ready to go. And when the road was opened for them, Raffaele Marcello, one of those out early on, but it was initially the number 44 Porsche, Lauren Heinrich at the wheel, that was doing the times. Then others started to get into a rhythm, and the top time was traded out late, and therefore running out of sequence. Patrick Niederhauser, who briefly got himself up to the pointy end of the grid, but then dropped away again as others went on to a second run. Number 69, Albert Costa, was pressing on. In the end, he would be 7th in the Verstappen.com Ferrari. Also looking rapid was Andrea Caldarelli in number 60. Lamborghini 4th he would be. 2nd, Lauren Heinrich, who did put himself back at the very top, but was then pipped just before a red flag by an absolutely flying Riccardo Fella. Raffaele Marcello for 3rd. Riccardo Fella, his championship rival, for pole. It's going to be a really lively race this afternoon. For now, from all of us here, goodbye.